Skip is only the
Is Carol on it?
And then he goes,
She's
No, she's
on,
there.
online.
She thinks that's the same, but I don't
So
see it.
Austin, I just made extra copies of the packet so that if it's in your way, to your
Oh.
left, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I had my old one.
Yeah, because I'd had people ask, so.
It was a long time ago, but I somehow.
Right.
It was a long time ago for all of us. It's like, what
Yeah.
am I doing? How do I set up this
I
room?
know.
Good to be back.
Okay, have we got our act together, folks?
As much as humanly possible.
So is Banta in there or not in there?
Yeah, I've got John's iPhone, which I believe is him, and RJ Marks, Tom Tees, Carol Connell, and G17Q. I'm not sure who that is, but they've raised their hand.
So we can't see who else is there, right? We don't have names on.
You can, if you're closer to this, it's something we're trying to work out.
Closer to it?
Yeah, the writing is down below.
That writing is what it is? Okay.
Yeah, and even if I did this.
Okay.
You can see Carol's name a little bit easier, and when we get
I
two
can
people
see.
speaking,
Okay. All right, that's fine. Okay, are we ready, ladies and gentlemen? It's 6 o'clock. Sorry, won't be up here. You're right. Call it order the meeting of the Gearhart Planning Commission on June 10th. All commission members are here, and Chad and Cheryl, and Carol is joining us via Zoom or something, I don't know what it is. Hi, she's waving at us, nice. Okay, so we first have the consent agenda, the minutes for May 13th, the financial report from June 3rd, and correspondence. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Tomlinson. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Commissioner Taggart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, moving on. Reports. Staff. Do we have a report?
Michelle, if you want to go first?
Chad, go ahead. Do you have anything?
Anything?
Yeah, just a few things. Budget passed for next year. We bolstered the planning effort in regards to monies available. That's going to help us with some fire station things as we move forward, which we're doing now. At the 8th, the City Council granted funds to begin the preliminary work on the new fire station location, such as basic design, planning help, and some specialist planning, and geotech work. So we're going to be moving forward with that to try to get the information to the City Council by the August City Council meeting. So we're in a compressed state, but we'll be able to make it. Other than that, thank you very much, Russ, today for your work on Duncan's Crossing. Today they finished all the superstructure, what would you call that, I guess? The beams?
The base for the walkway, yeah.
Correct. And the next, as long as the weather permits and the people available, the next part should go fairly smoothly. And we should be done when we're done. That's all I've got.
Is that okay?
Hey,
Carol? I'll call on you, Carol. Yes.
The Parks Committee is really moving right along quickly and getting ready to put together policies and park improvement strategies. And so mark your calendars for August 29th. There'll be a joint work session between the City Council and the Planning Commission to go over the draft plan at that point. Our deadline is October 1st, and I expect you'll have a hearing on that in your September meeting.
Okay. Anything else?
Can't think of anything right now.
Okay, but I'm sure you'll think of something else later. Okay. Anything from any of the commissioners? It's good to see you. Do you have anything you would like to mention at this point in the meeting?
I have a question of Chad.
Sure.
There's a concert in August, this piano in the dunes thing. What is the permitting process they had to go through? Who approved it and what are the criteria for approving it?
There really isn't too much in the way of criteria for approving it. So what I did is I brought it to the city councilors and the mayor. They had the discussion about what it was. We went back and forth with the organization to make sure things were taken care of. We required a certain amount of parking, which Bob Morey is going to help with, and some guides and people to volunteer and help. But after that, once they approved it, then I worked with the company, and looks like it's scheduled to go for 3 shows in August.
So the city council approves it? Is that what happened?
I asked them to approve it this time. Again, there's no guidance.
Okay. Is that something we should look at in the future?
I can prevent a commercial event from happening anywhere. That would, in a park, that would be one way to do it, that I have that ability to do. But as far as weddings and family reunions and things like that, those parks are open wide for those kind of things, without alcohol.
Well, that should be a condition.
It does weed a few out.
Not many.
I have a follow-up. How about the ticket income? Is that going all to the artist or?
No, they have provided some tickets for the fire department to resell as a fundraiser. They're also donating some of the proceeds to the fire department.
Great.
I think there was one other organization that they're also doing some donation, but it does go to the artist and his staff
Well, it's
to
something
you know, be able to do this. And this is his full-time job.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
it's a pretty special event.
Okay. Yes, Sharon?
I just was curious, on the budget, I guess I'm asking Chad, the planning assistant grant? Is there a planning assistant?
Sometimes. I always budget for it. Whether or not we receive it is one thing. So, yeah, there are grants, and we do receive one grant yearly that we get as long as we do some reporting.
So there are people who are getting some of those monies or not?
Giving or getting?
No, getting.
It would just go to the city planning area, and we could spend it for some sort of planning
Oh, I
effort.
see, because it didn't get spent, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it was funded either, so I'll have to take a look at that.
No, says it was.
But it does get spent throughout the whole thing. When you look at the category as a whole, it could be used for Ms. Cheryl, it could be used for expenses for this group, you know, and all those sorts of things. So it's within the category.
Is that the $1,000 grant?
Yes.
300.
No,
Yeah.
it says
And
20.
so DLCD just
Oh.
provides those automatically.
No,
No, it says 25,000.
Oh,
This is is this the part of the parks?
Maybe because-
You know,
no.
Yeah.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
Well, it could be, I'm not sure how you categorize. We have
That-
15,000 coming for the park.
Yeah, that's what I categorize that in, the Parks Master Planning Program. The revenue came in there, and that's where we would show the expenses, which we're working on right now.
It was on the,
Oh, here, the minutes. Cheryl, this is probably a question for you. The playground equipment on last month's minutes, the mayor working with Berkeley Sturgill have raised $30,230.17.
Chad asked that I verify the accurate, up-to-date number with Christie, and that's what I got.
Okay,
30,000.
Yeah.
Berkeley Sturgill raised 11, almost 12,000 of that in quarters
Okay.
and checks that she received.
Okay.
And then the remainder came from people within the community.
Donated, okay.
Wow.
You were wrong.
Well, I confirmed.
You're confirmed, okay. All right, any other comments or concerns from commissioners today? No, okay. Goals list, let's take a brief look at the goals list. If you notice, there's been an item added on there. The explore accessory dwelling unit provisions. But otherwise, it's like we discussed at the last meeting. Some things moved around and that. So are there any
Yeah.
Yes,
Can I
yes,
just quickly summarize what I did? And I think this is what the direction was. The fire station UGV swap annexation, I noted as a first priority that we talked about, and of course, that's a comprehensive plan update. And then the explore accessory dwelling unit provisions would be a comprehensive plan and zoning if it went on to that, and that's a priority 3. And then you drop down to the, under the zoning ordinance, those first 3 have been there for quite a while. And the one that was added was to consider adding riparian protection standards to the parks and open space zone, and that would, as shown here, be a priority 2 after the fire station. And what I want to say about that tonight is that I've talked to the chairman of the Parks Plan Advisory Committee, and rather than make that item a separate action in the future that's just a long process for a fairly easy amendment to that zone, I think it may be able to be inserted into the parks plan and then adopted that way in that process, rather than having a separate process. And we'll get to that, but since that's coming right up, it would be happening and before you in the fall.
okay. So we'll leave things as they are right now, depending on what happens with that. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and I think you can count on it coming back to you through the parks plan is maybe how to best sum it up, and that'll be pretty soon.
Okay. Any concerns, any comments about the goals list? No? Okay, moving on. Visitors' comments. Do we have any visitors with comments that are not part of our agenda items? Do we have anyone out there, Chad?
Let's see, we've got John Banta, I believe is on, Tom Tees. We have somebody, G17Q, RJ Marks, and Robert Moore.
Can they raise their hand to let you know if they want to say something?
You can ask them to unmute and speak.
Okay. So if anyone wants to say anything, now is the time. Okay. Not hearing anything, we'll move ahead to the public hearing. This is the public hearing 21-01P Banta Land Partition at 1060 McCormick Gardens Road. Briefly, I will read through the hearings disclosure statement. I'm reopening it. We've opened it already, so we're just reopening it. So I'm going to read through the hearings disclosure statement. I will ask the counselors, the commissioners, if they have any conflict of interest or ex parte contact or personal bias. Ask the few people here if they think we can make a decision. Carol will give her staff report. Then the applicant will give their report, and then we'll hear from proponents, opponents, and neutral comments, and move ahead from there. So I'm going to read the hearings disclosure statement. All persons testifying shall be deemed parties to the application and must provide their name and full mailing address if they wish to be notified of the decision, continuances, appeals, or other procedural actions required by the code. The city zoning code specifies applicable criteria to be relied upon in making a decision. Those criteria and findings of fact are in the city's staff report. Public testimony should be limited to those criteria and findings of fact or to other city or state land use standards that the person testifying believes apply to the proposed land use action. Failure to raise an issue in person or in writing with sufficient detail to afford the hearing body and the parties to the hearing an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals or to seek damages in circuit court due to condition of approval. Before the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may ask the Planning Commission for an opportunity to present additional relevant evidence, arguments, or testimony that's within the scope of the hearing. The hearings body shall grant the request by scheduling a date to finish the hearing, a continuance, to a time and date certain, or by leaving the record open for additional evidence, argument, or testimony pursuant to ORS 197.763 6A through E. Do any of the commissioners need to declare a conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or personal bias? Seeing none. To the audience, are there any challenges to the commission's ability to make an impartial decision? Seeing none. Carol, it is your opportunity to give your staff report.
Okay. So I hope you've all had a chance to read this. I'm going to do the best I can to summarize and get through it, and then start the discussion after the applicant makes their case. So John Banter requests approval to divide a parcel into three for the three heirs of the family. The applicant received partition approval by the Planning Commission in 2020, and at that time it was simply dividing the city property off of the county property. So in terms of the city action that was taken last year, there were no new lots created at that time. Now, you're being asked to take that city parcel and consider dividing it into three new parcels, or two new and three total. I'm going through just went through the staff report, page 1. The exhibits will point out that the application has been submitted by the Bantas with their drawing. The wetland inventory identification is shown by an aerial. It's a general identification amended by aerial. And it's also on the partition sketch, shows the wetland boundaries in general. The transportation system plan applies, particularly the street cross sections, and table 7, which are the planned projects for Gerhardt. The city administrator's comments were to be sure and address the rear lots so that they could be seen from McCormick Gardens Road. The police chief had no comment. The fire chief had a letter, and we'll talk about those in a minute, because there are conditions related to fire hydrant and fire access and road width on that fire access. Public Works indicates that new water lines will of course be required to the new parcels, and Classic County didn't have, let's see, planning director letters with comments regarding the road access requirements are attached, and the road maintenance agreement that went along with the partition plan of 2020. And I'll just mention that road maintenance agreement and that partition of last year has been recorded. The road maintenance agreement applies to both sides of the boundary. So all of the Banta property, 2 lots on the north side, 3 lots on the city side, if this is approved, will be subject to that road maintenance agreement for the access to primarily to the back parcels that don't have frontage on the McCormick Gardens Road. Okay, just a couple of things to highlight about the procedures here. This was deemed complete in February. The applicant asked for 3 continuances, March, April, and May, and gave the city an extra 63 63 days to get to a decision, which would include any kind of appeal to city council. And those, that 120 days plus 63 expires then on August the 3rd. Applicable review criteria are the zone. This is an RA zone, 1 acre minimum. The wetland and lake freshwater zone. The section on transportation improvements in your zoning ordinance, and all their application requirements and procedures. Secondly, the subdivision ordinance for Gearhart. Relevant sections are land partitioning, design standards, and improvements. And then fire code is always applicable in a land division. Property is zoned RA, 1 acre minimums. All the 3 lots exceed, well, actually 1 is an acre and 2 are 1.8 acres. Access to the parcel now is on McCormick Gardens Road. So that, as drawn, parcels 2 and 3 in the back are landlocked. And these are large lots, then they're long and fairly narrow to start with. So this is really the only way to divide them in terms of having some of them be landlocked. So the proposal is to, from McCormick Gardens Road, there's an easement. It's 25 feet wide, and you follow the easement at the south, starting at the south east corner of parcel 1, and it goes west to the boundary of the 2 parcels in the back, parcels 2 and 3. And then it goes north up to the county parcels and provides access to those. And I'll just quickly say you got some correspondence on possibly changing the portion that's in the county, but we don't believe that affects anything you're doing on the city side. The Bantas may be interested in moving that portion, that part of the boundary to the north side of the county land, and we believe you don't need to be concerned with that. Okay, regarding that access and fire service, a fire hydrant is required to be installed because the nearest hydrant is more than 600 feet away, and that's fire code. So you'll hear about that again towards the end on the conditions. The characteristics, there's no structures there now. There are a significant amount of wetlands on parcels 2 and 3. It rises, then at the west end of those parcels, the land goes back up again, it drops down, and then comes towards McCormick Gardens and Roads. And out of the wetlands, it raises up again. I think I'll just go on. I already mentioned that. So, in reviewing a partition, you have both a zoning ordinance and a subdivision ordinance. And so, I'm going to just briefly run through, starting on page 3, the zoning ordinance requirements and how this layout satisfies those. The subject is parcels configured so that each parcel complies with the RA zone already mentioned. The development standards in a freshwater wetland zone says that development, construction, or alteration within 25 feet of a freshwater zone boundary requires approval of a development permit from the city. And the application would be submitted with a drawing to show what kind of work is being done in that regard. A wetland determination or delineation, and those are 2 different things. The delineation is more specific, it's more in-depth, it's actually, I think they dig test holes and really get the hydrology of the plant and the soil conditions determined, whereas a wetland determination is a more general, less in-depth analysis. And those are the 2 ways to go about doing that. If at the time that it's needed. And the specific wetland identifications requirements apply when the land is proposed to be subdivided into home sites, or if a new home is proposed. So right now, we're at the subdivision stage, and a wetland identification should be done. We have one, as you see, it's a general, it's not either official determination or delineation by DSL. And so the city finds the partition and structures may impact the wetland, but we don't know, because nobody knows yet where houses will be placed on parcels 2 and 3. And ideally, you get that wetland determination done at the front end of development so that you know what you're working with. But Chad will could describe, or he'll, to you, or I'll tell you, that what happens if we know there's a wetland and a building permit comes in on that property and it's any closer than 25 feet or near to 25 feet, there would have to be a determination to make sure a more exact boundary is identified. If a house were proposed to be 50 feet or 75 feet from what we know is there now, although it's not defined specifically, it probably wouldn't be an issue. It would be certainly meet the 25-foot setback standard. You know, at this point, we're recommending a delineation or determination be done as a part of this final planning that will be the last stage of this partition. But that could be something that could be deferred to a building permit, and we'll get back to that. Okay, transportation improvements and access requirements. We're still in the zoning code here, and the transportation policies of the Bureau Transportation System Plan and the subdivision ordinance apply, because the following types of development are required to construct transportation improvements in accordance with procedures of this chapter. So if you drop down to item 5 under that B, required are partitions are required to construct improvements in accordance with the Gerhardt subdivision ordinance. So we're talking now about McCormick Gardens Road. And I'll remind you that in the last year's partition, the city did require an additional 10 feet of right-of-way be added to the McCormick Gardens Road frontage of the city piece, because that's the transportation plan's direction, that eventually McCormick Gardens Road, which is the only road serving that side of the city, will be widened to 60 feet. And the way that 10-foot turned out is we now have 50 feet, and if anything is done on the east side of McCormick Gardens Road in terms of development, then that would be the additional 10 feet. If not, at least we have a good amount now in front of this property to make those improvements, and they could be made. Now, you only have 187 feet of frontage, and of course there's no improvements on McCormick Gardens Road. And people say, well, why in the world would you just do a little segment like that? And that's the debate. Really, the code requires it, because there's no other time to get it. When a person comes in for a building permit on any one of these parcels, and we say, oh, you have to build a road out there now, it doesn't work. It's, as the code says, partitions are required to construct the improvements. But there is room to maneuver a little bit here, and I'll tell you that next. The other part of this that's applicable is no building permit should be issued until all street improvements are in place and approved by the city manager or otherwise bonded in conformance with this code. The city does find that, you know, there's a requirement to do this, but it's up to the commission to decide exactly what way it best can be done, and I'll help you with that. But we know it's applicable by our own laws, and it also applies not just to the McCormick Gardens Road, but to the proposed railroad improvement trail improvement in the TSP. So I'm talking about that now on the top of page 5. And the requirement for a shared use path denoted in the TSP figure 7 on the west side of the property. Now we're going flipping over to the west side. It is relevant by this land division because the parcel is being divided for 3 new home sites. You did not require that last year, although it was discussed and we knew it was coming. There were no new parcels being created in the city last year in that division where the city part was separated from the county. But now we have 3 new lots. That's considered development. That's considered a partition. And the dedication should necessarily occur before the land is divided and before building permits are requested. So, staff recommends a condition of approval that the partition include a right-of-way dedication to provide a north-south connection of the planned path for public recreation and access in this area. And I would say that it says dedication, but it could also be an easement, whereas in that case, the property owners would remain owners, but there would be an easement to eventually build that path. Do note that there's no plan to build a path. There's no money to build a path. This is like one of the earliest steps of trying to link up a north-south 40, width of a minimum of probably about 30 feet, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but could be less, of a north-south connection to help that side of the community travel north and south without having to go in and out of all the streets on the highway to see and connect with their neighbors. That's in the transportation system plan, and the transportation system plan is the legal vehicle by which it was adopted and defined how we go about this, and systems are set up for this. So, we'll come back to this again. This was a tough issue for the owners, and it's an opportunity to get this trail in as well. So we hope we can come to some agreement. Okay, I'm still in the section of the zoning code that's now talking about improvements to streets. So I'm both back at the McCormick Gardens Road and the trail. Except as provided, existing substandard streets within or abutting a proposed development shall be improved in accordance with the standards of this chapter as a condition of development approval. The city manager or designee may waive or modify this requirement where the applicant demonstrates that the condition of existing streets to serve development meet city standards are in satisfactory condition to handle the traffic. But what is the requirement for improving an existing street is applicable to single-family dwellings and duplexes, where all single-family dwellings and duplexes are front of an existing street that is planned for a sidewalk or a trail. The transportation system plan shall construct the sidewalk or trail improvements in accordance with the standards of that plan. The improvements may include, but are not limited to, sidewalks, trails, curbs, gutters, and planter strips. I'm just making sure everybody understands that we have the tools have been adopted and defined and legally reviewed to allow you to make these requirements. Now we're in the position of having to apply them, and every case is different. So we're doing the best we can here to get what we need as in the long term, but in a fair way to the property owners. So we know McCormick Gardens Road is a substandard street based on our classification for it, and it needs to be improved someday. And how do we best go about doing that in terms of the review of this application? In addition, that trail on the Railroad Avenue right-of-way, and it actually is defined to be a road, but there are many places it can't be a road, and the trail is very minimum, and that's all we're really even talking about at this point. It might be more of a road, have however road capacity as you get further south towards Pacific Way. But in this location, the terrain is probably not going to ever make it happen. And it's definitely long-term because there's so many pieces that need to be connected. But anyway, it was determined by you that the city parcel could later be subdivided into 1 acre lots, at which time the city can require these street improvements in your last year's decision. Now, on page 6 and 7, there are ways to do this. The city manager can waive these requirements. He can defer them. He can require a fee in lieu of the improvements, or it can require they be built. And the city finds the transportation improvements and right-of-way dedications in this case are required when you're creating 3 new home sites. If the city determines that, for instance, McCormick Gardens Road improvement makes sense as an isolated piece of road improvement there, then the city can ask for a fee in lieu. And that would be determined by the cost of the improvements, not by the planning commission, but at the staff level with the applicant and the city engineer, and probably the applicant's engineer. Okay, so that's the zoning ordinance. The subdivision ordinance, applicable sections start on page 7, and you'll see a lot of the same language. And just making sure you understand you have the ability to make these decisions tonight. There's no question that the TSP includes these 2 improvements that I'm talking about, 1 on each end. And the land partition is required to not just dedicate them, but build them. I'm going to jump down to the shared use path a little bit. There's a funny connection between the west end of the applicant's parcel and the existing road right-of-way, railroad right-of-way that's still there. And so it's a little bit of a jog that needs to be connected. I think we would ask for the very minimum width off the back of that parcel to make enough for somebody to get by in the way of a trail that's still safe and adequate width. That figure 7 in the plan improvements in the transportation system plan identifies both street and non-motorized shared use path improvements from Oster Road to Park Lane in this vicinity. And the purpose of it is to provide an alternative north-south public access route for homeowners living on the east side of the highway. You're going to see this notion confirmed by the Parks Master Plan as well, because it's, of course, recreation as well as transportation. The Planning Commission may require the applicant to meet the planned pathway connections when the land is proposed to be divided, whereas where we are now. And it would need to be about 35 to 40 feet off the back of the west end of the property. That would be just for the easement, not for any kind of improvement. Would be, of course, much less than that. And again, there's no plan to build anything, just trying to piece together the land over in the future. And it could be by dedication, and it could be by easement, as I mentioned. And the easement would be maybe the more palatable way to go. Okay, so, I just think I'm repeating myself here, but I think I'll keep moving on down through page was left out of page 10 under wetlands. Planning Commission may prohibit the partition of any portion of property which lies within the floodplain or wetlands or any stream or drainage course. These areas shall be preserved from damage and destruction resulting from clearing, grading, or dumping of, and then the sentence stops. What's missing is dumping of earth, waste materials, or stumps, except as may be permitted by state or federal agencies with the appropriate mitigation. So I'm a little bit redundant, but we're in the subdivision ordinance now, and I'm just trying to show you how these two ordinances cover everything we're talking about. And the city finds that the inventory map illustrates a wetland, site-specific determination is required prior to approval of a final partition plat. So here it says it is required, and the city, you know, can require it now, or can, it may be more appropriate to do it at the building permit stage. All right, I'm skipping it all the way to the end and come to, I think, a conclusion. The rest of this is just all the aspects of monumentation, survey requirements, and other land division statutes that will have to be met, because we've seen final plats before. This is the preliminary 3-lot preliminary plat. After tonight's decision, and before it's recorded, they'll come back to show compliance with any conditions attached to approval of this preliminary partition. And so, starting on page 12, based on the findings that I've summarized and written in this report, staff recommends approval of the tentative partition subject to the following conditions, as may be modified by the Planning Commission. Within a year, the final plat shall be returned to the Planning Commission for just a sign-off, because usually it's so complete by then, it's just a check and ready to go to recording. With the final plat sketch, provide the following: a site-specific wetland determination or delineation by a qualified professional wetland scientist to the city before the final partition plan application, or with the final plan application. And development, construction, or alteration within the flood freshwater zone or within 25 feet of the freshwater zone boundary requires approval of the development permit from the city. The application for development permit shall include a site plan drawn to scale and measurable so that to determine the effects of the building plan and the narrative describing the proposed site work. Number 2, the final plat shall be modified to incorporate a portion of Railroad Avenue pathway, an estimated 40 to 45 feet wide, either dedicated to the public or defined on the plat as a public access easement. I might have changed that a touch, but I think it's there in your version. Street improvements. No building permit may be issued until all required street improvements are in place and approved by the city manager, designee, or otherwise bonded in conformance with the provisions of the subdivision ordinance. Okay, so the subdivision allows the applicant to bond those and go ahead with building a house as long as the street improvements are eventually put in accordance with the bond provisions. But under A, street improvement cross-section plans and cost estimates to McCormick Gardens Road shall be submitted to the city for approval prior to final partition plan application. In lieu of the transportation improvement requirements, the city manager may elect to accept the applicant monies to be placed in a fund dedicated to the future construction costs of the improvements. And you saw back there earlier, that would be a fee in lieu of making the improvements. And then the other two lesser options are to require non-remonstrance to do it sometime later in the future when some public project is done, or finally just to waive them altogether. street improvements. Talking about McCormick Gardens Road there. Provide evidence from the county that the private road easement plans comply with the county road width requirements. We've got a 25-foot easement already there, so that's met. What's left to do with that easement is the construction of a gravel roadway that's at least 14 feet wide. And I've been working closely with the county planning director on this week, so we're all on the same page. Okay, so that's almost at the end here. Coordinate with staff on a proposed road name that reflects the history, flora, fauna, or geography of the area, and obtain approval for the sign specification, install a sign where the private road intersects with McCormick Gardens Road. This is actually an easement, it's not a road, and it's occurred to me that this could be just an address for the two houses in the back that are actually addressed on McCormick Gardens Road. Or if they decide to name the easement, I don't know what is easier for emergency identification and for maps that are made by other agencies and whatnot, to leave it as a McCormick Gardens Road address or to give it its own name. And but since it's an easement, it probably should just be McCormick Gardens Road with a clear indication at the road what the house numbers are in the back. Okay, if more than 5 trees are planted or removed, shall obtain a tree removal permit. That includes the vegetation of more than 50 cubic yards as well. Surveyed monuments required to be completed in accordance with ORS, and that's defined by statute. 7, coordinate with the city regarding McCormick Garden Road improvement plans, which we've discussed here. When would they start? The city has to be notified when they start. How are they going to be constructed to the satisfaction of the city? So that's really after the plans have been determined and then before the actual work begins. That's what these steps apply to, the actual work commencing. And then I need to add one last condition that has a few parts to it. It's related to the fire access that looks like I failed to get in here back in February. And that is that the applicant's required, I'm just telling you this, and it'll be written out, but this is what it will say. Install an approved fire hydrant prior to issuance of any building permits. Let's see, on the easement, install no parking signs if necessary, unless there's sufficient width topographically to accommodate parked vehicles, but still assure that the easement is open for fire access. And finally, let's see, I think I got it. I already mentioned the signage. Okay, so that's the staff report, a summary of the requirements of the conditions that you can attach to any decision tonight. You have 3 choices of approving this request with conditions, as you may modify the ones that I've proposed. You can continue this hearing, but I don't think you can continue this hearing because we don't have time to get to an August 3rd appeal deadline. And you can deny this request based on findings that you feel this application is not worthy of approval, and then we need to develop those findings, at least in terms of some direction to staff. Well, that's the end of my staff report, and if you want to hear from the applicant, who would be next, and then save your questions for later, that's fine with me.
Do any of the commissioners at this point have a question specific to Carol with the information that she's presented?
No.
No.
Well,
Oh, what, okay. Go ahead, Sharon.
And this is just because I'm I'm new to all this. Carol, if the city manager elected to accept the applicant monies in a fund for street improvement, how do you assess how much money?
Yeah. It's defined more specifically in the code, but basically it's identifying with an engineer and city approval, probably by our own engineer, what those costs, what the improvements are, what the going rate is, and come to this agreement with the applicant on that amount, that dollar amount. And cities, I don't think ever done this, but cities do it everywhere. And, you know, we might get a model from a local city that's already done it, but that's basically the way it works. It's a negotiated technical review. You wouldn't need to come to the planning commission.
Russ?
Well, I wondered about the 40-foot easement at Railroad Avenue. I wondered why 40 feet? It seems like a pretty wide strip for what's essentially, I presume it's more of a walking path, if it ever is manifested.
That's a really good question. If I can get the city manager to put the plat back up there, I'll show you how everything aligns. Where am I? I can't quite see it. Okay. How things are so patchwork of properties back there. If you look at the whole stretch, but we don't need to look at all. Go back, you had it. That was good. Go back. You see the parcel 2 and 3 with the darker lines, right?
Yeah.
In the back, on the west end now, we're on the west end, and what you see is a wavy line, that's the wetland, we think. So there's a wetland boundary right there. And that almost touches some existing railroad right-of-way. See it? Right there. And so any kind of a trail would, okay, and then you go north, let's just go to the Bantas on the other side to understand where this is going to the north. And you see some individually owned parcels that have over time been deeded, I guess, back from the railroad to property owners. So those are private pieces that, you know, we lost the chance to make these lights years ago, and what we're trying to do is fashion some way to get part of it back. And so the county's not going to require anything on the Bantas County piece, but if we even can get it up to the corner of this Garden Terrace Road subdivision through the Bantas City piece, you know, that makes it possibly accessible, and then it's then able to go south onto the Railroad Avenue right away that's there. And so that separation, or that distance from the southwest corner of the corner of this parcel 3 is 30 feet. It used to be tax lot 900, and it's 30 feet about to there, right to there. Yeah, right to there. And if we could get 30, so there's no point having any private land on the other side unless it's an easement. But anyway, then if you get 30 feet up to the right of way, then you get about 10 more just to make sure you have 10 feet of connection to the existing right of way there. And this needs to be refined, but that's about the best we can do to get close without taking the least amount of land to make a connection.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Carol at this point? Nope, we're good. Okay, so now it's time to hear from the applicant. John Banta is there. This is your chance.
Okay, you want to go down the list and we respond to what she asked? Or do you want me just to start talking about Railroad Avenue right off the bat?
This is your chance to talk to us.
Okay, the Banta family, we understand what we're asking for. It was never meant to be a subdivision. I went through this before. It was my family's property. They had it since the 60s. They left it to the family as an inheritance. I have my 3 siblings are looking to have a piece of the property. At this moment, I can't tell you that we're ever going to build on it. I think one sister is going to build on the front portion of it fairly quick. The other 2 parcels in the back might not ever get built on. So we start off with the wetland delineations. A delineation, I've been told, is only good for 5 years. I can't tell you that that property will be built on in 5 years, and for me to go and pay, or for the family to go and pay for delineations for something that isn't going to be built on, or could not be built on ever, doesn't make sense to me. I understand that we require a delineation when the permits are issued, and that will be the proper time for us to have that delineated. But I also understand from Harold's point of view that it's tough to track that through permit process. But that's what I'm asking for. I would like it, because I'm not sure that anybody's ever going to build on it. It might just sit there and be mowed. That we hold off on that until a permit is pulled, if a permit is ever pulled. The McCormick Garden Road access or improvement. I guess if you've ever driven down McCormick Garden Road, it's a lane and a half wide road that has signs, trucks, everything sitting on the side of the road, and for us to, at 180 feet or 190 feet, whatever this is, to make an improvement, it would almost be a hazard. To widen that road, put a sidewalk in, and then go right back into that narrow lane road again. I don't think that I personally do not feel it benefits anybody on that street.
Nobody wants it.
Yeah, and nobody, talking to the neighbors, nobody cares for it. I understand that it's a TSP project. I also understand that it's several $1 million, and it's down the path quite a ways. I would ask that we waive that until the time comes up where that improvement actually happens. The family has no problem donating the 10 feet of property that you originally asked for, but to make the improvements, we're asking that be waived. We agree with the fire hydrant. If at the time that we pull a permit for the first house, we put a fire hydrant in, we understand that. We agree with the parking structure, we agree with the tree removal. What else was there? Oh, the path in the back. The family is adamant that they would prefer not to do anything with Railroad Avenue. But it's something that it's more security. It's more of what they see as their concern is trespassing. People living back there, moving in, as you go around. We have a lot, you're seeing more and more homeless people here. This would be something that would be very hard for anybody to police. And if we donate 188 feet of land that goes nowhere, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, immediately to our north, that's the county. The county has said they have no interest in doing anything with this. And you go to the south and you go to the right, and they're saying they have no desire to do anything with it.
And none of the neighbors up to Palmbrook, basically, I've talked to all of them, and they'd even be willing to sign.
Whoa, we don't know who else is talking. John Bant is talking, we do not know
Okay.
who else is
Okay,
speaking.
sorry about that. What she was saying, and I apologize for that, is that the neighborhood has talked about this, and we've gone to the neighborhood to ask their opinion of it, because didn't really want to put this just on us, and they're all opposed to it. So at that point, I'm asking for some forgiveness there, and if that ever becomes something, then the family would be but to just be the first ones to come out and say we're donating the property to the city because the city's asking for it, we don't want to do. And I don't want to do that to our neighbors. And I think that addressed everything you asked, I think. Harold, did I miss anything?
you don't want to do anything with the wetlands until you ask for a building permit.
Exactly. Just because we don't know what time.
Okay, and then the second thing is, you don't want to make any improvements to McCormick Gardens Road or a fee in lieu or a deferral to a later date.
Well, and I'm not sure, so a deferral to the later date, I don't understand exactly so what you're saying is that McCormick Park Road would get widened and would get street improvements, and everybody that lives there currently would not have any burden to pay, but because we put 3 lots in that we might not even have houses on, we're gonna be required to update that and to maintain that and to pay for that?
No.
Is that?
So the deferral, well, first of all, you've given the dedication, and that's great. That's a big step. This is the first opportunity we ever had to even get started on this road project. So it looks silly at this point that it ever would happen, but there's not much happening over there yet. All right, so you've given the dedication, and this sets the stage for somebody who develops or divides their land in the future, they will also dedicate. And now how do we get the improvements in there, which are required right now, unless they find an alternative method? The deferral would be that you would sign a waiver of remonstrance, it's called. And so if in the future, everybody along there said, well, we don't want to do it now, we'll do it later, can we get a waiver from everybody, signatures, a legal document gets recorded, and that waiver says when the city decides to put a full street improvement project in at once, you'll pay your share. This is commonly used all over the state and other states. It's called a waiver of remonstrance. It just says you won't object to forming a district to make that improvement. Now, who knows who you even is at that time, but, and I've never seen one come to fruition, but it's the last resort. If they ever get the property owners to contribute to the improvement of their street, and it's.
So that improvement wouldn't happen until the improvement happens all over McCormick Park Road.
Right, and I've never seen those waivers ever turn into any project in any of my cities in the last 50 years.
And the Benta family would be willing to sign that.
Okay, well, that's an option. The trail is the same story. We've seen interest in something over there for better access. A road's probably not likely, but a trail is an opportunity. It's in the master plan. The city has the ability to require it. Maybe you'd be more amenable to an easement rather than a dedication, where you own the property. And I'm pretty sure you'll never see a trail.
Who would be liable if that was an easement and somebody got hurt on that property? Then would the property owner be liable?
No, I mean, I don't know, but that's a legal question that would be part of the resolution of the project, when and if it ever gets built. We're in such an early stage of it that again, we have an opportunity to act on our own plans that are legal. And if we don't do it with you, then the next person will say, well, we don't have to do it either, and there we are with no implementation.
Carol, I appreciate the conversation we had last night. That helped me a lot, and I appreciate you walking through this the way you are. I just have a couple more questions. If we did this easement and the family signed off on an easement, if nothing else ever happens, would the public be allowed on that because there's an easement there? Now does it become public property, just that 190 feet?
Depends on how you write the access easement, but I would say it's an access easement, and yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted to walk on it because they found a way to make a connection down to their friend's house a block away, they'd be allowed to do that.
Okay. Yeah, that we, the family would prefer not to do. So I guess we need, I need to, I guess what I'm doing is asking the city to waive that, that pathway. The band of family is willing to do everything else but that.
No.
Or the street.
Oh, we signed, yeah,
Right here?
yeah, I mean, I don't want to go out and make that street improvement, but if we could sign a legal document saying that when it becomes, or when that happens, like you were talking earlier, we would do that.
Mr.
Is that
Bantha,
approved?
Mr. Bantha, do you have any more testimony to give to the planning commission?
I do not.
Okay. All right, fine, thank you. Now, it's a time for proponents. Do we have any proponents of this division, land division here? Anyone else that would like to speak?
Give them a moment to unmute.
Yes, I will give them a moment. I will give them 30 seconds. Oh, 2 minutes? 2 moments.
Doesn't look like.
Are you seeing anything? Okay. Are there any opponents? Anyone opposed to this? It looks like there's nothing. Neutral comments? No. All right. So this would be a time for the applicant to rebut anything that anyone has testified to, but no one has said anything. So I will move ahead and close the public hearing. It is now time for the commissioners to discuss. If you first have questions for Carol, I think, Stephanie, you said you had a question for Carol. Go ahead.
Carol, I'm assuming since nobody spoke up today that we have absolutely no correspondence from any of these neighbors along the line here?
Nothing.
True.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Carol at this point? All right. So it's time for discussion. Would someone like to lead off? Because I always have things to say. Yes, Sharon.
Well, I have a question, and actually I'm gonna put you on the spot, kind of. Number 4, them wanting to waive the wetland determination. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've been kind of on the fence about this. And I was hoping to ask Chad more of a clarification on whether or not, what he feels comfortable with, because John makes a good point that, like, you know, speculatively, you know, they don't know if they're ever going to build on it. It would be a burden on them to put that delineation forward 5 years with the state of Oregon. So if they didn't do it within 5 years, they had to hire somebody else to redo it again. And so what Chad's really been working with, from what I understand, is that if the development permit comes in, or something like, well, in this case it's unique because it's a petition. So if development permit comes in, adjacent to a wetland, he would have somebody come out and delineate it or determine whether or not there is some wetlands near the development. And if that's sufficient enough for the city and him, I would feel comfortable going with what he's comfortable with. But this is a unique situation because there is a partition, and the landowner might not know that there is wetlands that they can't actually build on right now. And so that would be the only good thing to come out of it, was to do something ahead of time, knowing that these partitions would have some buildable land on them or not. So, yeah.
Well, you know,
Anything else?
I'll speak as
Okay. Yes, sir.
if I can as a builder. It's not that unusual to have land that no one's made a determination on. And then you say, well, you check it at the time you're looking to apply for a permit. You say, well, there's the low ground, there's the high ground, let's locate the house over here.
Right.
And then you build the appropriate amount of footage from your setback and giddy up.
Yeah.
So I don't see why, and what, doing it, the 5-year thing is significant, but I think the other thing is the drying climate. The chance that a wetland determined today is still there 10 years from now is flip of the coin.
Or the opposite, you actually can have increased amount of wetlands.
Well, right, I mean, it's a flip of the coin either way.
Yes.
It's substantial, essentially, but.
But in this case, in the policy and the codes are basic. The reason why they're requesting this is because it's in there to say, are we partitioning land that's just completely wetlands, and why are we doing that? Like, so it's a preemptive strategy to say like, oh, these are all wetlands. Why are we partitioning these off? Because they can eventually become development. We're trying to protect those areas. So I understand why this is in the code and why this is there. In this circumstance, like based on the aerial, you can see that it's been pretty much cleared where there's a potential for some development area. But I haven't been on site. I don't know what the extent of that wetland is. So it's just kind of a weird gray area that we have to kind of decide on. And I would kind of fall back on Chad and whether or not he feels comfortable with that, and Carol, but I don't know.
Sure, sorry. So the way that it works now is when a building permit comes into the city, the building official first does his first take on it, provides all the plans to the city staff, the fire department, the public works, and myself. We all take a look at it. My job is to take a look at the zoning to make sure it's correct, to make sure the setbacks are good, and to see if there are any wetlands. If the proposed building site wants to be closer than 25 feet to the wetlands, they're able to do that if they have a determination or a delineation. So if I look at the plat and their house is, let's say, 75 feet away from the line that looks like it would be the wetlands area, which is fairly easy to determine on a basis like that, and wanted to be 75 feet away, I would approve that. If it wanted to be at 25 or closer, then we would require the delineation
But,
or determination.
but what time of year do you determine what's wetland?
Well, and I've worked with Austin before, and I've worked with quite a few people over the years. You can take a look at the flora, the fauna, the leaf, what's growing in that
It's
area.
within the growing season, the state standardization, or actually the national standardization is growing season, so that can be pretty much up until about May or June, and then anywhere up to like, October. So, yeah.
But
But to have a wetland, you have to have wetland hydrology, soils, and vegetation, so you have all three components. You have all evidence of those. And so, making a determination is very simple. Making delineation has to be approved by the state, and that's the 5-year process. The determination is basically just saying like, yeah, you likely have wetlands right here, and then here you can based on that assumption you can go forward. But
So determination is a fairly easy, simple, not so complicated thing, is that correct?
it's everything that it involves the delineation, except you don't have to go through the state review process.
Okay,
So I could go out there, dig a soil pit, do everything I would do for actual delineation,
okay,
but instead I'm basically saying, here's where I think it is, that's up to you, and the city's up to you, whether to decide that is. But if you want to go forward, you're going to get fully delineation, you go to the state, it's a 3-month review process,
okay,
it's a little more extensive, but,
okay.
and that's when you're kind of like, you have like a little island, your wetlands kind of surround it, you're trying to build on that island, you're trying to make it work, sort of a thing. If there's a clear line, you could probably get away with determination and deal with the setbacks.
Okay.
Don't we have a problem, not just with the building site, but also with the septic site?
Septic's a whole other deal, that's the DEQ and their determination whether or not they can put a septic in there.
It's the same thing though. We'll look at the They lay out on the plot plan where the septic is going to be. If it's outside 25 feet and they were approved at that location by DEQ, then it's great. If it's within 25 feet and they were approved by DEQ, we would make them do a determination or a delineation. But, you know, getting close to a wetland has all of its challenges with getting an approval from DEQ because of the amount of water.
We're not inventing the aliens here.
No, we don't want to do that anything else. I think our problem comes with the wetlands determination is because we're dividing the property, and that's where the partitioning kicks in this other stuff. If it was just like, you know, you were just building on a lot that already existed there, then that's a whole nother thing. It's when we're partitioning it that then it kicks in some other things.
But I guess, you know, I'll be the devil's advocate. So these people have private property, so they want to partition it, say it's all wetland. And they partitioned it. Why does that bother us?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's their property, their dirt. And maybe I'm on the wrong side of this.
No, yeah, I understand. That's like kind of where I'm kind of in the middle of it, because, like I said, like I think the reason why these codes are here is like, why are we dividing up wetlands for potential to be development? But it's also the landowner to kind of do their due diligence and make sure that there is no wetlands on there. Like, so if they feel confident partitioning the property, that there's no wetlands and they can build on the site, like, I feel like that's up to them, right?
Yeah.
But also we're trying to protect wetlands and resources in our city, so it's like, what do you want to do?
Well, you know, I hark back, we had a situation 3 or 4 years ago at East Pine Drive, is it? Where we had a lot at the very east side of that, a big lot, they wanted to subdivide it, essentially. And there was a wetland involved. And I think I have this right, that we then said, oh, okay, it's a, 2-acre lot, part of it's wetland. We said, there's your wetland, here's where you can build, and we allowed it.
They'd already done their work though. They'd already determined.
No, I understand, but I guess, yeah, anyway, I understand the difference between the subdivision or the partition.
Right.
If we want to go, there's another way we can do it without a determination by a consultant. You can also request the state to come in and do a determination of the property, and they will do that for free.
Okay.
Sometime this decade.
Right, within their time.
We just started this decade.
They will do that determination. It's they either come out and say, actually will do a look at the aerial. If it's significant enough that they don't think it's worth coming out, they will just write a letter saying, like, based on our determination, like, there is wetlands in this area or not. So we could require John, the Banta family, to do that if we want to go that route.
So would that be a nice compromise?
I think that would be a
I
nice
think so, too.
compromise, yeah.
I'm on board with
I'm
that.
on board with that.
Okay.
Well, and I'll continue being the devil.
Sure,
Okay,
Russ.
so let's say this person comes and says, yeah, there's a wetland there, then what are we doing? Are we saying, well, you have 3 parcels, you can divide it into 2, the third one is a wetland? Is
No,
that where that?
No, that's up
is
to
that
them
the
whether or
path
not
we're
they
talking
want
about?
whether or not they want to divide it again. I can continue to go with the partition based on the findings.
I see. So it doesn't change that we're gonna give them a partition, it just gives us facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the information there is there, then they have that information. I imagine, do they also give a report to the city, or is it?
It's basically a letter determination.
Okay.
And when they would come to build,
Yeah,
they said, I want to build my house right up to the
Right.
wetland. I would say, well, you need this
right.
determination of delineation. They can then say, I've got it and I can do it. Then they can build to 0.
Okay.
Okay.
Is the determination a 5-year cycle?
Determination. I think I have to follow up on that, but I think it might be within that statute because the delineation is 5 years, so they probably say the determination is 5 years as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be a solution. Okay, all right. Other things from commissioners? Other things, okay.
Well, I guess I feel like his request to give the land but not pave it, to do the waiver of remonstrances, if I have my language correct, seems logical to me.
That's McCormick Gardens?
Yeah, the property they're providing on McCormick, but not,
Yeah.
not doing the paving work.
Right.
To me, if they paved it tomorrow and they did the work 15 years from now, the paving is gonna be redundant anyway. They have to redo the whole thing when they redo the whole road, so
Is
it's
it
kind of money down the rat hole.
Is it a waiver and a payment in lieu? Is that what it is?
I believe the way Carol described it, you waive it and then you agree when the road gets built, you're in for your
To
10
pay.
grand or whatever
Okay.
it costs.
Is that what it is, Carol?
I think I gave you 4 options. One is to require them to build the improvements with a building permit
Okay,
and with the final partition. The second one is to defer the improvement, and that's the non-remonstrant agreement that says we're gonna go along with deferring it until the whole neighborhood's gonna get done, and then we'll pay our proportionate share, whatever it is at that time. That's a deferral or a non-remonstrance. And then the, let's see, hold on, let me get back to my pages. Yeah. Fee in lieu would be, with the final plat coming back to you, at that time, they'd also pay a fee in lieu of doing anything that had been determined and agreed upon by the city and the applicant. And the most restrictive would be to have them build it now, with the final partition plat.
so Carol, in your, yeah,
Say that again. A most restrictive, build now. Second, fee in lieu to be paid now, basically now meaning when it's finalized. Defer it to an unknown date and sign a waiver that you'll pay your share then, which I said I've never seen happen, but there's lots of waivers in files. And the last one is to waive it altogether.
I think that's how.
so in your document here, in your conclusion, that part of your conclusion would be under 4. Is it actually listed? I'm trying to make sure that whatever we decide, we have the right words and the right
Yeah.
piece of it.
Right. So number 4 right now says, street improvements, no building permit, this would be the most restrictive, I think, may be issued until all street improvements are in place and approved by the city manager or otherwise bonded in conformance with the provisions of the subdivision ordinance. Now that's not exactly the same term as the other ones I've mentioned. Bonding is saying you will do it, and if the bond expires, it could be extended, but that's more of a subdivision ordinance process. The waiver and the deferral are not quite the same. So what I'm laying out is what you can do as the most onerous there. And then you have these other options in the code if you want to back off from that. I'm just letting you know that legally you can require it, but you have options.
Okay, A, B, and C do not refer to that deferral, though, do they?
No, because then it says
Okay,
require it and then sit down and do the cross sections and get the city to plans to how to do it.
okay.
Well, let's see. But, no, okay, A, in the middle it says, then it says, do the cross sections if you're gonna require it. In lieu, and the second half of 4A, in lieu of the transportation improvement requirements identified, The city manager or designee may elect to accept from the applicant monies to be placed in a fund dedicated to the future public construction of the improvements. So that, you know, the fee in lieu really is the second most, it's the backup to doing it now. If you don't do it right now and then build your house, then you provide the fee in lieu and they'll hold it in a fund. That's what that is. And that's kind of where I stopped. But I told you earlier, and I think I said it again here, you could drop both of those most onerous methods and go to a waiver of remonstrance, so you'll do it in the future if there's ever a future project established, and you'll pay your share. And the final one is just to waive any street improvements at all. So we need to rewrite that based on which option you think is best. And I don't know if Chad wants to weigh in here,
Carol, that
but
waiver,
anything else?
Carol, that waiver that you said that never gets come to fruition, what do you mean by that? We never take that up?
The waiver is you find for reasons like, well, there's findings in here that give you the option to do that. I guess I better remind you of those, because this is hard. I mean, I had to go through this a lot of times myself to figure out. Waivers on page 6 and deferrals. Okay, so if you can go there, I think it'll help. The city manager may waive or defer street standards, including sidewalks, roadway lanes, bike utilities, landscape, and so on, where one or more of the following conditions in A through D is met. Now, and we'll go through those in a second. Deferrals of sidewalk improvements are not permitted when there's an existing curb, which we don't have, or the site is abutting an existing curb, which we don't have. Where the city manager or designee agrees to defer a street improvement, it shall do so only where the property owner agrees not to remonstrate against the formation of a local improvement district, which is the waiver of remonstrance method. Okay, so if he waives or defers, then you still should do the waiver of remonstrance. But let's go back to what you asked. A is this, does the standard conflict with an adopted capital improvement plan? Is this a reason to say no? And I'd say no. We don't have a capital improvement plan, but we have that this conflicts with. We have a transportation plan that this supports. Number 2, does the standard improvements would create a safety hazard? I don't think so, but you know, it'd have to be a finding that says, yeah, we think you can waive it because it would create a safety hazard if you built it. And that's what the applicant actually said. C, the improvement is not likely to be extended during the planning horizon of the TSP due to topography or committed development on adjacent property, and the improvement under consideration does not by itself significantly improve operations or safety. Okay, so the planning horizon would be 2037. And it could be built in that time, and maybe it wouldn't be built in that time. So we don't know, but it's still pretty far away. Is the topography an issue? No, it's fairly flat. Or committed development on adjacent property is not a conflict. And the improvement under consideration does not by itself significantly improve transportation operations or safety. That's a good question. Will this make any difference? Yeah, I mean, you could improve. I imagine there's quite a bit of pedestrian activity. I don't know what a bit means, but the neighborhood probably walks on the road. And if it were a little bit wider with a designated maybe it's not a sidewalk, maybe it's just like the Gerhardt style, it's a lower key, non-curved walkway. That would be safer. And the last one is the improvements are deemed more appropriate as part of a larger project. And that's where the non-remonstrance come in, is this is the right way to improve McCormick Gardens Road through a larger project.
Would that be recorded on the, was that what,
Based on those,
would that be recorded with, on the
deed.
the deed?
what do you mean, would what be recorded?
That waiver of demonstrate.
Oh, yeah, the waiver, wait a minute, waivers,
Or the
I can't remember, let's see, I have to,
agreement of demonstration.
yeah, it would be recorded. I think it's supposed to be recorded with the property title,
Yeah.
but I haven't actually seen one in a long time.
I think,
This problem is they're, go ahead.
I think Austin's question was, why do you say that nothing's ever happened with them? You tell us that they can do this, but it's, nothing ever happens, and that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Those are
I've never seen a local improvement district formed. And that's what the non-remonstrance is for. I agree to, pay my share if a local improvement district is formed. I've never ever seen one formed.
Well, just think about
And
this.
there's a lot of pieces of paper sitting in files, but it never happens. Maybe somewhere, but
Carol, think about the scope involved here.
ineffective.
That what we're going through to just partition a lot compared to
Right.
forming an improvement district, which is way more politically involved, lots more people involved. That's why you've never seen one happen, because people figure out how much work it's gonna be and it's not gonna fly.
Well, it would take, like, let's say 60 or 70% of McCormick Garden roads to go through the same process where they want to divide, but they don't want to do it now, and you finally get enough mass to create a local improvement district, because they all sign the waiver.
That's why you don't see them happen.
Yeah.
It is a way to let it happen. It doesn't prohibit the effort, but it does control it to a certain degree.
It does, but the likelihood of you getting what you're trying to get is very low.
So, okay, tomorrow, the city decides they need to widen McCormick Gardens.
Yeah.
Not that it's going to happen, but say are you going to have this
Waiver?
what if it needs, if it needs,
Non-remonstrance, I mean?
if it, yeah, what happens if they decide they need to widen that road?
I can
It's,
help with that.
huh?
So if we decided we need to widen that road and add some sidewalks,
Yeah.
right now the city cannot afford to do so.
Okay,
So we would propose starting a local improvement district.
okay,
That local improvement district would tax everybody within that area that we wanted to build over a period of time, and once we collected enough tax money, we would go ahead and do the work. If they did a waiver of D, still can't pronounce that word, a waiver of D, then when we did that local improvement district in the future, if we choose to do so, they would still be responsible. Is that correct?
Yeah, with a recorded document, I mean.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
That's my.
Well, the other question that's related to that is, so if we do a fee in lieu, and people don't ever widen the roads, what happens to all the fees that are sitting there?
Yeah, where's the money go?
I mean, they deem it's a $20,000 show to widen that road. They put the money in a pot. They never widen McCormick Gardens, so that just sits there for decades, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right. I think we beat that
Yeah,
horse.
the problem is you see this, in a slow-growing community, some of these methods don't work. And normally in a fast-growing community, they'll make the improvements, because there's someone coming down the road next month that's gonna build another subdivision. You know how building can go. And things can happen fast, but it's probably not going to happen that way here.
They also gave us 10 feet, right?
They
Yes.
gave us the 10 feet, right?
So they gave us the area to build it, if we need it.
Okay, so we've looked at street improvements, doing the deferral and the whatever it was.
The pathway, they've agreed to the fire hydrant,
Okay.
we'll check that one off.
Wait, you do?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
they did.
they did.
Yeah.
So we just.
There's no choice on that one, really. Okay. So do we have anything else to discuss?
The trail.
Yes.
The trail.
The trail,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, I know how I feel about it. I think that, I worked on that TSP with the city, and we need some connectivity. That trail sits on the west side of the wetlands, so they have a nice soggy, yucky barrier between any homes they might build or never build. But I can certainly see the advantage of particularly children who might want to go from one cul-de-sac, those roads over there, to another one. There's lots of kids, because I see school buses stop there all the time. So that might be a way, but I think they've got a big buffer based on our map.
I will say that I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I know based on my land trust work with having public access on property, on private property, I think, pretty sure Oregon and Washington have laws in place where you can't actually sue or go after a private owner based on any accidents they have on a public access or any public right of way. So
I can help with that a little bit also.
yeah.
I'm no attorney, but we,
Retired.
he's an attorney, I'm definitely not an attorney. The area between Pfeiffer Heights Road and Summit, there is a easement that goes through there. In the easement, it specifically says for walking and access, as well as our water line that's underneath it. We were going to be sued because one of the things with that was that potentially that person would be liable. Our attorney found and argued just between the two of them that that wasn't true, and the lawsuit has never come to be, and the trail is still there.
If the property is, so is it easement we're talking about, or is it
Well, that's the thing we have to
deeding
decide on.
over? That's what I'm not clear on.
Dedication to the public or a private easement with public access.
Okay. If they dedicate to the public, would that eliminate their liability?
That may eliminate their concern of liability,
Okay.
but there is no
Well, I mean, I thought Chad just said the easement had no more liability
Yeah.
than the
Okay.
dedication.
All right. Okay, so one way or the other way, it'd be, okay. All right. That was my opinion. Other people's opinion on the,
I agree.
oh, okay.
Me too.
Oh, okay,
But
well, we can,
I find it really interesting that we didn't hear anything from any of those other people.
Yeah.
yeah, we did not hear anything.
Not even an email.
Right.
Okay,
And when we discussed this on the original partition, I realized when we did that we're gonna have the opportunity again to discuss this.
precisely.
And the fact that the northern portion was in the county didn't even come back to us at all anyways. So the reason why we're discussing this now and the reason why I think we all in agreement is because this is in the city and it's being brought back up, so.
Right.
Yeah.
You are totally correct. All that we did was on the original one say, okay, here's a line.
Yep.
down between the county and the city. Okay, so if we have no more discussion or anything else, let's see, I'm looking at my script here, yeah, we're okay. We've had deliberation. We need to have a motion. I'm going to, the things that we talked about, what I think we generally agreed on was the deferral and the waiver of fee, or whatever that was, Carol.
Remonstrance, right?
Remonstrance? Demonstrance?
Remonstrance?
There's ways to say it, but a non-remonstrance agreement.
A non-remonstrance agreement.
Can you spell that?
You're the lawyer. A non-remonstrance agreement.
Which means you're not gonna argue with it.
Okay, okay. So, I need a motion. If we are ready to go to a motion, I
Can
cannot.
I
Yes,
help you with the conditions?
Yes.
yeah, yes, you can, yeah,
What
that's
I think I hear, anyway, what I think I hear is, let's start at the page, top of page 12. Okay. Number one, to come back within a year with their final plat, period.
right.
Number two, with the final plat, maybe this is just a statement now for clarity, for everybody's sake and the future. A site-specific wetland determination or delineation by a qualified professional wetland scientist shall be provided to the city at the time a building permit is requested for parcel 2 or 3. Is that where you were going?
No.
No.
No, I think we were going that they would need, that they could have
They would need a.
Determination.
the determination by the state. That would be acceptable.
Okay. Okay, a site-specific wetland determination by a qualified wetland scientist shall be provided to the city at the time of a building permit. Isn't that what I said?
No.
No.
No,
The town.
Well, if required, based on the building permit.
No,
Or-
no, for
No.
petition.
with the partition.
With the
With
partition.
the partition, we are saying
Oh,
that the letter, as what Austin talked about from the
The tree.
state, that would be acceptable. That's a free one. So if they can have it done by a professional, or they can have it done by the state.
And the state does not cost anything.
Right.
That's
Right.
yeah.
So making the deal so that it's through the state means that the cost will not be borne upon the people doing the division here, the
Yeah.
Bantons.
Right.
But then it still may only last 5 years.
And it's,
And,
but,
and if they wanna hire somebody else to do a different one, they can do that.
so can I say by profession,
By
a site-specific wetland determination by a qualified professional or the state?
Yep.
Okay?
With the final partition application.
To be provided to the city before or with the final partition plat application. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
period.
You got that,
Okay.
Carol?
I wasn't sure you were going that way. Okay, yeah, good.
Okay,
Number 2, the final partition plat shall be modified to incorporate a portion of the Railroad Avenue pathway, an estimated 40 to 45 feet, either dedicated to the public or defined on the plat as a public access easement. Keep it?
yep,
Yes.
Isn't that what they disagreed with?
They need, yeah.
They don't want it.
They don't, yeah.
I
Number 4, street improvements.
Where was 3?
that was 3. Here, you're not following along.
I'm just trying to
1,
think of-
2, 3.
Okay.
David needs help sometimes.
The doctor.
I think you're saying that, did you say no street improvements at all?
No, we said that we would accept the non-remonstrance agreement.
Okay,
I wrote it down.
yeah, all right. Street improvement, cross-section plans and cost estimates to McCormick Gardens Road. No, we're not doing any of that. So, the applicant, this is kind of new wording. The applicant shall provide, this again is the time of the final plat submittal. The applicant shall provide a waiver of non-remonstrance. Supposed to say there's ways to say it. A non-remonstrance agreement to participate in the future improvement of McCormick Gardens Road. Period. I just have to get the wording. I don't have it in my head, but that's what it means.
I would say, Carol, to have it
Right.
recorded with the partition with the county.
Okay, good. Plat submittal.
And there is a
Applicant.
definition on portland.gov about waiver of remonstrance. And that definition really does help clarify what it's all about
Is it waiver
for
of
this.
remonstrance or non-remonstrance?
Remonstrance.
So there's no non.
It's the same. They're the same.
Waiver of remonstrance needs to be
It's the same, but let's use.
Is it what we think it is, or not?
Well, what the definition from portland.gov about local improvement district is, a waiver of remonstrance means that the property is automatically counted in favor of street improvement for a future lid. A waiver of remonstrance does not preclude a property owner from testifying to city council in favor of or against the improvement, but it does say it's counted in favor of a street improvement.
So they would be in favor of a street improvement.
When the time
When the
came.
time
According to this definition, and Ms.
Okay,
Carol has
that'll
that
take
one.
care of it.
When the time comes, they're not opposed.
They're not
That's
opposed.
right. They can be opposed, but their vote is.
Correct. Yep.
They're legally bound to the.
That's
They're legally
understandable
bound.
to me.
Okay,
Okay, all right.
Anything else?
they were okay with
All
trees.
right, now,
Fire hydrant?
4B, private road easement should comply with the city, county road improvement requirements. That's all stays the same. And that's 4B. 5 is the same, 6 is the same, 7 is the same. Well, let's see.
Yeah.
If they did anything on McCormick Gardens Road, which they won't, that probably comes out. Chad, when somebody builds a house, do they need like a work in the right-of-way permit or anything? If they're on the public street, do they need any kind of
No,
city approval as they hit the street?
no, to access their property, they do not need an approval, they just have to have the appropriate amount of parking spaces, not including the right of way. So everything is measured from the property line, not the right of way, so, no, there's no need for that, except for potentially on Highway 101.
But this number 7 kind of indicates that if any improvements that you decide to make would have to go through you in any sense, so.
But you're not requiring any.
I haven't before. We
Yeah,
haven't needed to.
I think it comes out. Do you agree?
Number 7 comes out totally.
Well,
Yeah, I just think it's irrelevant.
Carol, weren't you gonna put the fire access under number 7?
Well, no, I had a new number 8, so
Oh,
the new
okay.
number 7 would be, the applicant's required to install an approved fire hydrant prior to issuance of any building permits.
Well, what I'm saying is, number 7 basically says, they've signed the waiver, but if they just so happen to decide that they need to make some improvements, or add utility lines along McCormick Gardens, number 7 covers them under that.
Yeah, you're
So
right.
I'm thinking that it maybe should stay.
That's true. Yeah, I think the utility line, underground utilities, probably, yeah, it just covers everything, whatever applies. to this case would be implemented.
Let's leave 7 in there.
I agree with you. I think leave 7 and add 8 requiring the approved fire hydrant, the parking signs on the driveway if there's not enough width for parked vehicles, and to post the addresses of the rear lots to be visible from McCormick Gardens Road.
So moved.
Yeah, so moved. Oh, okay. So we have a motion. Austin has moved, according to the conditions as we've rewritten them at this time. Do I have a second?
Second.
Russ, seconds the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Thank you for your participation. So Carol, you will take care of all your legalese documents and we'll all in our spell remonstrance.
And
Okay.
for the applicant's information, I will write this up in a final form. The planning commission chair will sign it, and then it's in appeal state for the next few months. And then when any plans come back, we'll have those conditions. Oh, then final plats will be filed with you, and you'll see those conditions again.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Carol.
We have no unfinished business. We have no new business. Do we have any concerns of the commission?
How long can you leave a sailboat parked in your driveway?
I would refer to the code enforcement person for the city, Chad.
Are they living in said sailboat?
I guess forever is the answer. Is that
Yes,
what
sir.
you're telling me?
Yes, sir.
If it's a trailer though.
If it's a travel trailer, they can park it on their property also, but they cannot live in it.
Okay.
Yes, they can, you can't enforce it.
Well, there's that.
Okay.
I have to prove that they're living in it.
All right. If you catch them living in it, Terry.
Well, I'm not, I don't live next door to them, but I just think it's really inappropriate.
Yeah. Any,
Property rights, right, Russ? You can park anything you want in your driveway.
unless you're living in it. Any other concerns for the commission? All right, it is 7:52 and the meeting is adjourned.
Jenny, it's really nice.
Recording stopped.
No.
It is.
It's
Okay,
much
thank you, Ms.
easier.
Carol.